they can mold them, right? So
right. And that's the only team right now in the program?
For that specific coach, yes, but that doesn't mean it's going to be like that forever.
Sure. Well, the only reason I ask, sometimes, and we went through this on the softball side, sometimes if a program is already too established and they have a reputation, it's almost harder to make it elite, and a rebranding is like your best option.
Right.
So that would be the first step. But honestly, it's truly outlining like the mission statement behind what you're trying to do. Like if you have a mission behind what you're doing, it's a lot easier to actually express that and get people into the program that like match that and meet that. I see George in here, and I remember like 3 years ago, we went to B-Dubs with George because they were bringing a team over from a different program. And it was a great meal, but we just sat there and talked about like, hey, here's the way we're going to go about this. Here's what our goal is at each age group and what we're going to try to accomplish. And although we might be young, we might not be elite yet, here's our process of how we're going to get there. So I think like really just outlining what that looks like for them. Like how are they going to pull players from the really good programs that are already established? Because that's a huge key. You got to get the talent somehow. So how are you going to do that? So it's really twofold. One, how are you going to pull talent from other places? And two, how are you going to develop talent in-house that matches the talent of other programs at that point? I think are the two big steps for them to work through.
And before we get into it, the more I listen to you guys, it makes so much sense from a business perspective. Like for me, we got to have a mission statement. We got to have goals. We got to have things that we're looking at. We've got to have core values. You know, whether it's a company handbook or whatever it is, we got to make sure we hand those out to those teams because they have to understand what our goals are and what our missions are. Right? So I think like for me, the outline of that's big, right? And I just wanted to ask you this because I know that's a question that I got and it was really good, but you know, you're the team guy and you got a lot of good things going with what you guys do. So I wanted your input on that. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, and feel free if he wants to chat about it, feel free to pass along my info. I have no problem talking to him either.
Appreciate it.
That's huge, Ronnie, with the mission statement. I mean, even like whether it doesn't matter if it's just a team. Even Damon in here, like we had a confidence workshop last week, and he's like, "Hey, this would work great for my business. This would work great for my sales team." Like I know with my old company, E-Team Sponsor, I was basically a salesman with them, and they help athletic programs fundraise money, and they do a really good job. But like this summer, I'm going to go speak with them just about their mission statement and getting people to buy in because it's tough to do what you need to do when you don't trust the leadership. One. Two, like it's tough when you don't have a clear mission for the people on board. Like if I can buy into the mission and the why of the program, and some of you may have read Start With Why by Simon Sinek, and I just started listening to it on my Audible while I run, and it's been really interesting to just hear the dynamic because he paints the picture of the what and the why. Like for MLU, we at least me, I always thought that I had to explain what we do because people need to know what we do because it's a little foreign, like mental skill training, leadership development, confidence building. I don't know. Hitting instructor, I'm all in. Pitching instructor, sure, but something that works on my mind, I don't know if I need it. Rather than why and like the meaning behind why we're actually doing it. So for what we're doing, I think it's big to just have the why behind it too. The mission statement, hey, bringing the world together, dude. Bringing coaches, programs together under one platform is massive.
Yes.
Right. But let's get into it. Let's get rolling into the goal setting. It's like one of my favorite subjects, and we just had a great one there. And I can share the screen now because we won't have little kids drawn on the screen.
It's true. That is true.
I was like, who's drawing? Like these guys, they're so smart, man. They know all these little technical advantages. I'm like, I need a coaching session.
I don't have a clue even how to do that. So I was just like, oh man.
Yep.
I couldn't tell him to stop because I couldn't figure out how to do it myself. So I was like, all right, you got it.
I'm looking for the buttons to get it off. I'm like, I'm just going to stop sharing. And Jake's got it memorized. He's good. Today we'll talk about goal setting. And this is more of a team version of how to like set clear and effective goals for our team rather than just individually. But I think you can relate it directly to the individual goals that you have for not only yourself and where you want to go, and for your team and for your athletes and how to empower them to set effective goals that are actually going to help them get to where they want to go rather than say, hey, you need to set goals and then walk away and it's game over. The first thing that I like to at least talk about, I know the guys in here are really big on this as well, is attaching emotion to our goals. I believe that emotion, if you can attach an emotion behind your goal and your mission statement, it's that fuel in the gas tank. It's the jet fuel that's going to help your plane get off the ground. There's a big analogy that I really like is like, hey, how do we get our business to cruising altitude? My mentor always tells me, hey, how do you get to cruising altitude? Well, it takes the most jet fuel to get off the ground. And once you get up in the air, you start increasing, and then you start to plateau. You get up there on cruising altitude. Now you're good to go. It burns way less fuel, but it takes a ton of fuel to get up there. And if our goals, they're going to require, one, they're going to require a lot of fuel, a lot of emotion to get us there. But two, we've got to be able and be willing to buy in that goal is important enough for me to give all the emotion and all of my energy that I have to help me get to that goal. So from a coaching standpoint, I know just talking with my guys this year, talking with some of the travel programs that I was working with, and even working with some of the college programs in the beginning of January, and even in September, like in the fall, like kick it off early, right? Like, let's make this part of the program. It's, what is our mission statement? What is our why as a team? Like, why do we do what we do? And let's get some words and some values that we actually embody and encompass. And I know some of them are unity, right? Like unity or leadership or love or innovation and all these different words that are keywords or buzzwords. They're key terms that we can use, but making them into a verb rather than just a noun. Like, how do we show love, right? How do we show innovation when things are getting tough? Like, Jake, with what you guys are doing at BAMFAM, dude, is the most innovative thing in the world. After I got off the first phone call with you in the fall, or whenever we first talked, I was blown away. I thought it was a joke. I didn't think it was real. I'm like, nobody else is doing it. It's very innovative. It's very clever, and it's outside the box. So with our goals, I believe that it's necessary for us to attach emotion to it and to get our athletes to attach that emotion to their goals as well. And it can be their individual goals and then the team goals. What do we want to do as a program? Where do we want to go this year? We obviously want to win a championship, but how are we going to get there? And Ronnie, you'll hit on the individual ones and the attainable ones here in a minute, but just getting into that, the most important part, in my opinion, is we've got to attach that emotion to make it real. Once that emotion is there, we encompass it, we embody it, it becomes real. If you want to be the best coach in the league, if you want to win a championship or go to Cooperstown and crush it and come out with the championship, or if you just want to, your goal is to help get your athlete to the next level. It's a great goal. What emotion can we attach to it to where when things get tough and it gets a little rougher and you go through that rough patch of 25 practices in a month or whatever it is that you're doing, like if you're just grinding out there, you're able to still get through it with some pride and some love and some passion. And when things get tough, you don't fold. You're able to keep pushing through, keep growing. But without me continuing going on about that, Jake, I want to get into the treasure, because the treasure is really cool. If you want to touch on that and maybe some things that you've encompassed with your athletes about setting goals for them. And as a program, from that aspect, how do we set specific goals that are clear, they're meaningful, and they actually help align us with our purpose as a team?
Yeah, so it's kind of goofy for us because we do have the 3 tiers within the program, right? So we have the signature level, that's like the top level team. Diamond level is competitive, but a little bit lower level. And then gold is more of, prepping them to start at the high school level and just improve overall. So our different levels have different goals. And even within those teams, there's different teams that, we do expect to go and win a bunch of championships, and then some that, we expect equal playing time for all of the kids to develop. And I think the number one thing, and we're kind of reinforcing what we talked about the last couple of days, is just communicate that. I remember last year, Adam and I finished our schedule, and it was loaded. We knew we were going to see national level teams all summer. And at our parent meeting, we said, look, if we go above 500 this summer, that's a really good summer. Don't go in like we're 12 or 13U and expect that we're going to roll every team we play. We're going to see Division I talent all over the country. Our job is to go and compete. And then the other piece to that too that we had to communicate is, when you have 16 guys on a summer roster, all those guys are used to starting every single game at the high school level. But our job and our main goal that we really express to the parents and players is our job is to prepare you to get signed to play in college, which means just because you're the best outfielder that we have doesn't mean you're never going to sit, because our 4th outfielder, we're still trying to get him to go and play in college too. So it's really important and vital for their security within the team and their value to express exactly how it's going to go, so that they know going in what that is, right? And they can all shoot for the same goal. So for us, that was, we're not going to play equal time, but everyone's going to get an opportunity to be on the field and be seen. And number 2, here's our expectations of on the field. We're going to compete in every single game we play. We're going to hustle to and from our positions. We're going to have great body language. We're going to go about our business the right way. But don't expect to win every game, because it's just not going to happen. So whatever that looks like, we've had teams that we did expect to win every game because we were 12 and loaded with kids that were swinging loaded bats that were like huge for 12 and we're just going to touch it and hit a bomb. They could bunt it over the fence with some of those bats that they were using. So it just changes based on what you're doing there. I think program wise, even if there's different levels, one thing is just establishing goals within like what you're trying to get accomplished within the program. And one thing that we've done that most of our players know but don't really realize is there's little catchphrases and sayings that we use as a program that they actually know and remember, and it's a part of their vocabulary. For instance, hard work pays off. That's how we end everything that we do. And what's really cool is if you go to one of our positional workouts, it's all age groups, and there will be 10 coaches there. So we're saying it, yeah, but we have coaches, and the most important thing as a coach is to model it, right? We have 10 coaches in there working with every player in the entire organization, not just their own, that are modeling like, look, we're here to work, and we're going to teach you, and we're going to coach, and we're going to do that, and we're all going to learn together, because as coaches, we're going to work hard because we expect that from you too. So any expectation that you set from a goal perspective, you need to make sure as a coach that you're actually following that too and modeling that for the players of how to get there, because words are just words if there's not action behind it, right? So we got to make sure that there's action too. But I think from the program side, those are the big things. I know, George, if you wanted to hop on here at all, I think your team does a really good job of setting some of those. I think some of your leadership experience within the fire department, some of the things you've done probably assist with that. But you guys do a great job. So I'm going to shut myself up and let some other people speak. But yeah.
Yeah, George.
I think with the when it comes to setting your goal, you got to find out what the goal is per person. Each one of us have different goals. And trying to get those goals to unite for the greater good or the greater purpose is the hardest part we have and what we face. And we can all sometimes get overwhelmed by thinking about ourselves individually. Even as coaches, we can get concerned about our record or how we did in this area versus this area. And what you have to do is we have to surround ourselves with good people that will keep us humble and that will help us to grow. I am very fortunate in that the coaches I have with me do that. If I make a decision they don't agree with, they are able to talk to me about it, say what they need to say. And that's what I appreciate the most, is because we come together as a team as coaches to try to show them, the kids, this is the direction you've got to go. And it's all about the team. And the fire service, we preach that all the time. It's all about the team. What you do doesn't matter as long as the team success is there. So if you fail, it doesn't matter as long as the team is successful. If you are successful and everybody else is successful, that just means you're going to do better things. But it's all team driven. And unfortunately, a lot of times in sport, and I think in work too, we become very individual driven, right? So if I've got a kid that's hitting bombs and he can come up and all he does is swing for the fence every time, then he doesn't understand his role. I may need him to make sure he recognizes when I want him to swing for the fence and when I don't want him to swing for a fence. I also have another player that's my leadoff hitter, and he's not going to hit a bomb. That's not his goal. That shouldn't be what he focuses on. He should focus on just getting on base. That's what I need you to do. I need you to move, and if you're the second or third hitter, you're going to sacrifice your average, your on base percentage to move this guy around. That's your job. But you have to have the ownership of that, right? Everybody has to take ownership. And Ronnie brought up extreme ownership. I think there's a lot of us that have read that book. It's a great book because when you take that extreme ownership of, I'm going to take responsibility for myself and what happens, and for some things that maybe I can't control, but I'm going to take that ownership. Then you develop as a team and you become better and better and better. Unfortunately, again, we just go back to a lot of kids and players in today's world are very individual driven. How many people have said, hey, what's my OBP? And you're like, well, what do you care? What happened on the field? We still lost by 5 runs and you're worried about your on base percentage. Well, we need to make sure that for us, I don't give the kids their stats because I don't care. I don't look at like their traditional stat. Maybe you look at, their on base percentage or whatever. I look at their contact percentage. At the young age, I want to know, are you making contact with the ball? Because if you're not hitting the ball and you're batting 260, that's one thing. But if you're hitting 260 and you're putting the bat on the ball, maybe you're just having a run of bad luck. So we take a lot of that responsibility and kind of develop it within the team. But we talk about, hey, you've got to be – we are trying to make these boys men. And when they get to, Jake's level or Adam's level and the coaches that are in high school and college level, that these boys come up and they're pretty mature. They're prepared for the next level, that they understand what the expectation is, and they're a team player. That's the greatest compliment you can ever get. Hey, you're a team guy. Because a team guy means that you don't care about you. You care about the guy to your left or your right. And Jake and Adam can tell you about my little rant I went on at a game for an older team about, a certain way to look at it. But that's the way I look at it. Are you worried about the guy to your left or your right? Got to be worried about the guy to your left or your right. And that's what matters. And do we teach that? Do you bring that up, with your players? And if you're not, then that's a problem.
It was a top-notch rant.
It was a top-notch rant.
To 15-year-olds. He's like, you think baseball's hard? You want to know hard? Try pulling a dead body out of a fire. That's hard. Baseball's easy. And these guys are like, what the heck are we doing right now?
And they don't know they had met him yet.
No, he just went off. It was awesome. We were trying not to laugh in the back. Like, oh my gosh. He's on one. Let him go. Let him go.
I was scared.
I got my point across.
That's true. You did. You did.
I love it. Ronnie, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I got two things. The first one is I want to go back off of what he was just saying about, not looking at stats and average. A good story is I got a pro guy that I work with, and last year I texted him during the season. I said, hey, what's going on? You look like you're struggling a little bit. Is everything okay? And because when you look up on Google what their minor league stats are, it shows that he's batting 190, and you're like, man, I think he's struggling. Did we do something wrong in the offseason? What's going on? 2 weeks later, he gets bumped up to high A. And I called him and I said, what the heck just happened over the last 2 weeks? What's going on? And he said, I've got the second highest hard hit percentage in the entire organization. They're just not falling yet. And it goes into the yet term that we were talking about with Austin in the kids group is, I look at 190 and I'm like, man, did I do something wrong as a coach last year? But hard hit percentage is what mattered to that organization. So when we're talking about goal setting, we have to look at the things that we can control. Yes. So that's the biggest thing is we can't look at things that are out of our control. I know we mentioned that in roles, we mentioned that in attitude and things like that, but we have to go off controllables. Controllables are, are you barreling up baseballs consistently when you're in the cage, or are you just swinging and hit the ball to the fence? Do you have a purpose behind what your work is, and what is that purpose? Is that purpose going to go after your goals, or are you just hitting to hit? Things like that. And then attainable goals is the one thing that I've been big on. I was big with this with the kids, and I'm going to be big with this with you guys is, Jake said it best is some teams that he has are it's good if they have 500 a year, right? But there are some teams that we're not going to lose. And you have to understand that self-awareness goes big into this. And understanding team awareness is big too, is understanding where your team is at that specific year. You have to look at your guys. We're not going to make a kid who's never played baseball before win every single championship for us. We have to know where we're at, what our team is like, and then create goals to help them get better. I remember my sophomore year in high school, we were 0-25. And I literally said to my team at the end of the season, I was one of the leaders, I said, by the time I graduate, I just want us to be in a better place than when I got here. And we were. And I think that's a good goal for everybody is look at where your team, be self-aware, have team awareness of where you guys are at, and then try and reach goals within that team. Because what you'll notice is kids are going to develop at different speeds. So if we create goals that are attainable right now, that can reach that bigger goal later, I think that we'll get a lot further with them just rather than going for that big bang. Because there's a time and a place for that, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And something you mentioned, Ronnie, was like setting those attainable goals in practice even. Like, hey, let's try and work on line drives in the middle of the field. Or let's set up those L screens, those big screens, and let's try and hit line drives over the L screens in front of there. Maybe on my defensive side, let's turn X amount of double plays, or let's make the play in less than 4.5 seconds because the average runner is 4.35 or 4.5, whatever the average runner time is. I can't quote it perfectly, but something like that. Let's make a play in less than 4 seconds in the infield, right? Like finding those attainable goals in practice, I think builds ownership, it builds confidence, and it builds leadership amongst your unit to help you get to where you want to go. Adam, go ahead and kick it off.
Yeah, I'll go a little bit of piggyback off of that attainable goals concept that Ronnie's talking about is, I mean, Jake and I when we had that schedule last year, we talked about how it'd be tough for us to have an over 500 record. That's the goal. But we always make sure that as coaches, we are reaching out to our players and sitting down as a group and setting team goals together. It doesn't make sense for us individually as coaches to go up to the kid and say, hey, this is our goals as a team, because our goals may not necessarily be the kids' goals. And I want to hear what they think our team is necessarily capable of. I want to hear what their mindset is going into the season and what their team goals are, and then try to work together as a unit to make sure that those goals happen. So I think it's important as coaches to, at the beginning of the season, to sit down with the group and have that discussion as a whole so everybody's on the same page about what those goals are. Plus, it's just when you're involved in that, you feel a bigger connection to it, and it's easier to go after those goals. And to help motivate those kids, I like as a coach to let them know what my goals are individually, because I think there's nothing more beautiful in the world than someone talking about what they're passionate about. I have a good friend of mine that's a big time bowler. He's got like 7 300s and he's 25 years old, and I don't care about bowling at all. But when I see him talking about it, it gets me a little amped up and a little bit interested in it. I stay away from it because I'm terrible at that. But like when you hear someone talk about what they're passionate about, it's contagious and it makes you want to work on the things that you are working on. And in a team environment, if we all have the same common goals that we're reaching for as a team, I think it makes the step-by-step process and those individual goals and those small attainable goals that Ronnie's talking about a lot easier to achieve throughout the year. And we try to do this as an organization with BAM. Jake and I, when we're talking to coaches and we're interviewing them or we're talking about bringing people on, we let them know what we had in mind originally with this. But, I mean, I think George would attest to the fact that, we want to have their involvement. We want to know what their goals are as well. And we find a lot of like-minded people within this. Like there's a guy in here, his name's Sean Buffy. Sean is a coach for a 9U team for our organization, and this is his first year. And I think, we do a good job of letting coaches know that we want them to be a part of it. And he came to us earlier this year and talked about a poem that means a lot to him. And it's If by Rudyard Kipling. If no one's ever heard that, I suggest you go and look at that. And I love that he came and talked about that, because that's something that I've listened to for like the past 10 years of my life that my dad originally introduced to us. And it's a big part of the way that I operate and a big part of the way that I try to teach kids. And I just love that another person saw that same purpose within that. And I think that we can communicate that with each other because we're involving the entire group in the goal setting process. Don't tell somebody else what the goals are of the group. Let's come up with that together. And I think that makes those small attainable goals Ronnie's talking about a lot easier to reach because everybody's on the same page and everybody's working together.
That might be the biggest part. That might be the biggest part of the whole thing. I mean, just like having everybody included. I wrote down, make sure the team is included in the goals process and everyone has a voice.
Yeah.
I think we talked about it yesterday. Like everybody loves to be heard, whether it's good, bad, fluff, non-fluff, it's meaningful. Like we all love to be heard at some point. It's human nature to want to be heard. And if we're heard in a team setting, I think that it gives more value to empower that ownership to the athletes. And maybe you have the 10th man who's struggling. I was on a call this morning and the Astros mental skills coordinator was in there and he made a very interesting point about like the 10th man. And he's like, hey, maybe like with my team and with the organization, obviously in professional ball, it's a little different because they have so much time together during spring training and in the seasons at the affiliates. You're playing Nintendo 64 in the clubhouse, ping pong, all these other things. You're together for a while. It's different in our own deals, but I think you can find some similarities. And he mentioned something, hey, let's go to their environment. Let's meet them where they're at. So say there's a Dominican on the team and there are maybe 3 or 4 of them and they love their food. They got these amazing plantains, which by the way, plantains, I love
delicious.
That's a whole nother deal. We'll have a food network next week. Sound good? I'm in. I'll get my dad. He's got the Traeger right here. I love it. Now I'm hungry. I'm sorry, fellas. I'm sorry. But no, he mentioned something interesting. Like, hey, we have a Latino night where they cook for us and they make their food and we all eat together. We have a meal together. There's another thing. Hey, somebody on the team was really good at Fortnite. And we all just rallied around and we're like, dude, that Fortnite was incredible. Like, how do you stay locked in and focused when there's 99 other people around trying to kill you and you're building and going crazy? Like, maybe we can pull something from that experience to the game. And it hit home. I'm like, wow, maybe you can, right? Like, even in the midst of some chaos, you meet them where they're at, something that they love to do. We're all included in it. It's some good team bonding. It brings us up together. It helps us rise. And next thing you know, maybe we can pull something out of that experience. So I thought that was really interesting to me. Jake, I want you to hit on the treasures. The treasures was really cool. And it's a really cool deal. And do you want me to show the presentation, or do you just want to roll it off? Because I can show
I don't think anybody's got to draw on it.
Yeah, okay, I'll show it up. I'll show
Here
it
you
up.
go.
If you got
I
it.
think I got it, yeah.
Perfect.
There we go. If I can go to the right one. Okay. So, and this is part of our diamond level training. So after our players graduate from gold, which is more like baseball, softball skill stuff, we go into this stuff, which is more individual based. So when we talk about treasures, one of the phrases we give them is measure what you treasure, right? It's one thing to have a goal or to have a place that you want to get, but it's another to actually track that in a specific measurable way, that you can see your progress and you can kind of keep up with what you're doing and have a plan in place. I think a lot of our players right now, they're essentially driving a car without a destination. Like, they know where they want to go, but they have no roadmap of how to get there. And a lot of the coaches create almost this checklist that our society's created of every player has to do this, and this in order to get there. But every player is different. And like you guys have said, everybody's going to develop at a different rate in a different way. So we don't want to look at it as a checklist. It really is a roadmap, right? If I told you guys you all had to get to one specific location, there's a million different routes you can take to get there. Some will be quicker, some will be longer, but we want to make sure that we can at least track if we're getting closer to that over time. So we break down 3 things, and we call them our treasures, right? So we have time treasures. And this goes into how are you investing your time daily? We talk to the players about the difference between a deposit, a withdrawal, and an investment, right? We all have bank accounts, so we understand you deposit money in, that's great. You've gained something. We withdraw, okay, we've lost something. But when you invest, you're sacrificing something now for something greater later on. So we want to find out from our players and as a team, what are we investing our time in daily? Okay, and that goes into our practice plans, right? Like, what are we showing value in the things that we put in that plan? What's the intent that we're giving our players within the drill that we've given them? How do we keep them focused to do those things, to develop at a fast rate? And then why do we consider these things valuable? Like, what about those drills or winning games or getting players to the next level, whatever that is, like, what's the value behind that for you and your individual team? And that answer will be different by team. But having that outlined, I think, is key. And then we look at the past, right? We want to use the past as a place of reference. We don't want to live there. It's not a place of residence, but we can use it to create future success. So we want to look at things from our past. Okay, why do we hold these things close to us? Sometimes they're really, really good things. Winning a state championship for me, I hold that very close to me. But I also hold close to me losing 2 county championships in a row, right? Like, those are failures that – like, I have an itch that I need to scratch and I need to go and win a county championship. So that's a motivating factor for me in the way that I coach and run a team, because we've gotten there, but we haven't finished it off yet. Okay. So sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, but they're all motivational that lead to like our future action or our present action and mindset. Okay. So how do we use our past to impact our present and the mindset that we currently have now? And then we look into the future. Okay. So what are the goals that we have in our life? How do we value those? And then how do we measure that progress? And the future is the most important. One of the things we talk to the players about is really changing their perspective from living from their past to living into their future, right? Stepping into the future that they're creating for themselves. Have a goal or a plan of where you want to get to and have a roadmap of how you're going to get there, rather than allowing yourself to feel defeated or feel like you can't accomplish something just because you haven't seen it. Right. So one of the things we tell them, if you've done it before, you can do it again. Right. You hit a bomb once, you can do it again. That's great. But just because you haven't done it doesn't mean that you can't do it. Just means you can't do it yet. Okay. We continuously come back to that word yet. So how do we get there? Right. And I think when players begin to not only see these things and think about them, but physically write them down and track them on a day-to-day basis, figure out what they did that day to win that day, to get closer to where they're going. Over time, we start taking these baby steps, and a lot of times we forget. It becomes so overwhelming when we have this big goal that we forget to take the first step. So all of this is just helping you take one step at a time. And over time, in 6 months, in a year, you start to see the progress that you've made. Even if in that one single day you don't feel like you've gone very far, you've still moved forward. So this is really to help the players and then to help the team figure out where are we going, how are we going to get there, and what's that plan of progression in there to develop intent behind every action that we have.
Yeah, I think this is an awesome visual too about the treasures, and I think it's very easy for us to relate to. You know, we've all heard about the treasure. Most of us have seen the Pirates of the Caribbean or something where we think about the treasures that we have. I think that's big, Jake, and I really like how you simplified that just for your program and for the athletes that you get to work with, because it paints the picture for them. I mean, some of this stuff's tough to digest sometimes, and a lot of times we hear from our parents or we hear from coaches or leaders, or somebody comes in and works with our organization. They say, you got to have goals, but they don't give us the reasons why and how to get there and like the future plan. And I love the reference of stepping into your future. And if I was speaking right now, I would actually do the step into my future, because it gives like that feeling of, hey, wow, I'm stepping into it, right? Like if I'm an athlete looking, if I'm a coach looking, like I'm actually going to step in and embody that future. I might not be there yet, but I'm going to live in that future like I am there, because that's where I want to be one day, no matter what avenue that is for you. And Ronnie, you mentioned something earlier, and I'll let you hit on it again, but the celebrating the little victories, like celebrating those short-term goals and the little attainable goals along the way, and celebrating little victories that add that fuel to the fire. So many times, especially as athletes, we're looking at that big end goal. We're like, man, when I get to the big leagues, everything's going to be gravy. When I get to college, I'm going to be the best athlete in the world. When I get to 13U with those coaches, like, oh, I'm with the big boys. I got a new DeMarini bat, and I'm in Omaha tournament at College World Series. But guess what? We've got to celebrate the things in between to help us get to where we want to go. And that's a big point. That's just a reminder. I mean, a lot of us probably know that. A lot of us have either heard that, but it's a good reminder point to just remind our athletes constantly. We've got to be able to celebrate those little victories, that good take that I had at the plate, that good pitch I made 0-2 to strike somebody out, getting ahead of hitters consistently, making a good double play because I botched the last 3. Celebrating those little victories, it's a good reminder to stay in the moment. Ronnie, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, just the journey, man. Like, all of us want the big championship, and all of us want the Chicago Cubs, whatever it is, want that, you know. But what about the journey to get there? And then once you realize that there really is no destination to this, then you enjoy every bit of your job and what you're doing and the whole process, right? I mean, it is kind of cliche, you know, enjoy the journey, not the destination. But, you know, Austin touched on this before, is, okay, well, what happens when you do get to the destination? Now what? You know, are you just going to restart? No. I mean, there really should be, you continue to create goals and you continue to have dreams that you're going to constantly chase and chase and chase, but enjoy every single day in the process of that. Because once you do get there, then what? You know, right? Every major league guy probably wants to be in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, but they're enjoying being a Major League Baseball player right now. And then if they end up getting in the Hall of Fame, great. You know what I mean? But a guy like Mike Trout, I would love to know what his ultimate end goal is. And it probably isn't being the best Major League Baseball player. It's probably something a lot bigger than that, whether it's empowering young kids or reaching as many people as he can, or telling people to work hard, whatever it is. But that's what drives him. But what we see is something completely different, right? And I think at least for when I used to coach teams, it was, what's our journey going to be? Are we going to enjoy the grind every single day? I'm going to see you 6 days a week. Are we going to enjoy that grind together? Are you going to hate this because you just want to win, right? Or you understand that winning is a result of all the grind and the love that we have for each other and every 6 a.m. lift that we have or whatever it is. So I think enjoying the journey is number one, right? Enjoy the off-season training. Like for me, I love whenever I get a kid that wants to go outside and do sprints in this weather. I love it. And because I know that guy is just worrying, he just wants to grind and he doesn't have his end goal in mind, right? I love that, because I think for a lot of those guys, if they just hit that, I want to be a Division I athlete. Okay, you got there. Do you have to restart to become a pro? You know what I mean? So have these super high dreams, super, super, super high dreams. You know, I want to have the best baseball training facility in the entire country, period. I don't know if I'll ever get there. Right. But I know that I'm going to enjoy Buffalo right now because we're doing a really good thing out here. And I know that with the Dugout Coalition, we're doing a really good thing with that. But like, this is the journey that we're on and we're enjoying every step of it. I know for you guys, you got to do that with your team too. Enjoy the off season, enjoy the wins, enjoy the losses, because that's ultimately what makes us who we are. Right.
You're spot on, Ronnie. You're spot on. And I think Tony Robbins is the one who said it is progress equals happiness. Progress equals fulfillment. I love looking at Tony Robbins stuff. He's incredible. Absolutely amazing. I haven't been to his event yet, but I'm going to go to an event, and maybe we just do a DC collab where we just bring the squad to an event, ideally Fiji, so we can be on a beach and we don't have to worry.
There we go.
No, Ronnie, Jake, or Adam. I'm sorry, I don't get the snow on the West Coast. There's a reason I don't go 2 hours north, because it's snowing up there and it's cold and it's bears. I'll stay with the snakes and the warmth. But you bring up a very interesting point, and George even put in the chat. This is one of my favorite lines ever. Embrace the suck. Embrace the suck, man. George, it's funny you mentioned that, because it was my second year. It was after my first year of pro ball, and it was the very beginning. I think in February, beginning of spring training, we had everybody there, from the big league team all the way down to rookie ball, Dominican League. And Shelly Duncan, some of you may know Shelly Duncan. His pops was a coach. His brother played, passed away recently. Shelly played, and amazing guy, incredible guy, great leader too. And the first thing he says, he's got the mic, there's 250 people there, and the first thing he says with his big smile, he looks around, he goes, "Embrace the suck." And we're like, what? Like, dude, get off the stage. That's what you're going to hit me with a massive smile. He's like, look, fellas, it's going to suck sometimes when you're in Illinois in April and you've got to learn how to hit. It's going to suck when you're playing in Boston and there's snow on the ground and you've got to face a nasty pitcher, a Hall of Famer like Clemens or somebody like that, and you got to figure out a way to get the job done. It's going to suck when you get benched because there's somebody that gets called up over you, or maybe you get hurt, or maybe something doesn't go right in your actual personal life. But you got to learn how to embrace the suck, man. So I'm so fired up that you said that, George. That makes me so happy. That made my day. I'm good. I'm out. I'll see you later. But no, this is
going to end early. Yep.
I love it. I love it. Jake, I want you to just kind of close out. We got about 15 minutes left. Yep. And there's so much great things being said around. There's so much great topics that we can get. This could be a whole week, month, year-long type deal for goal setting and just like loving on each other. Just explain a little more about your process with your athletes, because it's very interesting what you do. You get a very good buy-in, and the athletes that are in the athletic one or the athletes one an hour before this are like sold. There's so many BAM hats, and I'm just rattled by it. It's really cool to see, but they're bought in. The quotes that they put in there are amazing. And the ones that we're getting on text are huge. So what is maybe the next step after you set those goals, you set the expectations, you have clear communication? What's the next step to actually like achieving those goals and winning a championship or being the best that you can become?
Yeah, I think consistency is key, right? And that stems off of embracing the suck, because whether times are good or bad, we can't let circumstance define our action. And it's really easy to do that, right? Just think about the coronavirus. It's defined what a lot of people are doing with their life. There's so many people that are just sitting around, not working, not trying to improve, not getting better, because they have a built-in excuse right now to not do those things. And one of the best things I've ever heard is what you seek, you find, right? If you look for excuses, you will find excuses. If you look for reasons to be successful, then you will find reasons to be successful. So we have to change our mentality and our perspective as coaches, that even when, we're 0-10 or 1-15 or whatever that might be, we got to embrace that, and we got to figure out the next step to move forward. And the one line I hear all the time at the high school level, at the travel level, you'll ask a coach before a game, "How you guys doing this season?" And he'll say, "Well, I'm doing everything I can, but we just don't have the talent. We just can't win." And if you've ever said that, I get it. But I also challenge you to look internally and figure out if you've really done everything you can. I remember I see Rob in here. I sat down with Rob and Michael's in here, and we got a few guys, and they sat down with me last year, and they were like, "Look, we're not very good, and we're not winning, and we want to win, and the girls care. How do we do that?" And we had like an hour-long conversation about, okay, how do we change the style of play within your team to match the things that you guys do well, right? So one of the big things I would tell you is every team needs an identity. And your identity might be that you guys are just a tough-nosed group of kids and coaches who aren't going to take crap from anybody, and you're going to compete from start to finish. Your identity might be we hit bombs and we'll live with strikeouts. Your identity might be we pitch well and we defend well and we can't hit, so we're going to bunt everybody and figure out how to scratch a couple across. But as soon as you figure out what that identity is, then you can play to that. And then you get buy-in within that because the players know. Right. I tell my players at the high school level all the time, like, look, guys, day one, I'll tell them this, like, look, we are not the most talented team in the county, but we're going to win a county championship, and here's why. And we break that down. Okay, I firmly believe that whatever expectation you set for players, they're going to achieve. And most of the time as parents and as adults and as coaches, we just set that too low to where they're going to reach that, but they don't feel challenged to go above it, right? Kids are the best in the world at just meeting expectations. Like, they think meeting is better than exceeding. They want that 90% A- grade because 96% A says that they tried too hard, right? They want to just skate by to get that. So our job is to not let them do that with the expectations that we set. So if we tell them, look, we're going to do this, this, and this, get your mind right, let's go work for it, then they'll buy into that. But they only buy into that if you model it, right? Because if you say that and then you go out and you're the first one in the dugout showing poor body language and saying, man, here we go again, then they're thinking the same thing, right? So one of the things that I would challenge you guys to do is think about your in-game coaching and think about your demeanor and your body language and your response to negatives and positives and whatever that is. And then think about how the team reacted to those things, because there's a lot of occasions to where one bad thing happens and the team doesn't think it's a big deal until they look to the dugout and they see that you just threw your pen on the ground and you're walking back in the dugout and you're upset, and then they're upset, right? Teams take on the persona and the identity that the coaches give off. So we tell our players all the time, if you go into a game and you feel overwhelmed, you feel like the other team's better, you feel unconfident, look to us, because we better be the representation of what confidence looks like in that moment, that you can feed off of that energy, right? But energy, right, or emotion is energy in motion. So when we look at emotion, the emotion that you show is the energy that you're going to give off. So if you want your team to be positive, you want your team to be confident, you want your team to believe in what you're capable of doing, then the energy that you have better be represented through that emotion, right? We talked about in the chat a little bit, The Energy Bus by John Gordon. It's an incredible book, super easy read, and just a lot of really applicable things. But we want our players to be CEOs, right? Like chief energy officers. They're driving their own bus. They're the ones responsible for their actions. And when you can get them to buy into that, then you establish leadership within that from players that actually feel that and are accountable for that. And I think that's where, as a whole in our program, our coaches do a really good job. And none of us are perfect. There's a lot of guys in here, but I think we look at different coaches for different things. And we're all comfortable in an environment where we're willing to learn from each other in this type of setting, to where they know, like, hey, if I'm struggling with this, Wick is the coach I should go to. If I'm struggling with this, I got to call Adam. If I'm struggling with this, I got to call George or Jim or whoever that might be, because we all get better by actually dropping that pride and being willing to learn and grow and be vulnerable together. I think one of the big ways we reinforce that from the coaching side, that if you don't have in your programs, I would be more than willing to send over what we do. But our coaches evaluation system, I think, is a really great way to give feedback to coaches, and to allow them to have conversations with coaches who have been there a while or highly effective coaches, to ask questions about how to improve, to give ideas about, hey, this drill was good, but how do we develop intent behind that? What were they focused on? How do we limit the transition time between drills? So if there's not an evaluation system in place, we're creating another one as DC and kind of branching that out with a full coaches certification that we'll be bringing out. But I think it all starts from the leadership that they have. So whatever standards and expectations you're going to set, we have to be great models of exactly what that is. Because if we're not, then it's just words, right? And I think most coaches understand that, but I don't think we always do the best job of showing that in the way that we act on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis.
It's a really good point, Jake, about how your athletes are always looking to you for guidance. And especially when things get tough and it's later in the game and it's a clutch situation, they're looking to see how you're handling it. Are you dragging your blanket in the third base dugout and walking down the line and hanging your head when somebody swings and misses? Or are you like chest up, shoulders back, locked in no matter what's going on around you? And that's leadership right there. And you don't have to say a word to do that. Yep. And a lot of us in here are very good leaders who embody that, but it's a good reminder as well, just to, hey, when things do get tough, let me check my emotions first, because I know my athletes are going to feed off of me. They're going to feel my energy. They're going to feel what I'm giving off to them. I think that's a big point that you made there.
Yeah. And sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. Like, you might be a nervous wreck in that moment, but you cannot project that, because they're going to take what you give and what you're projecting from that. So fake it till you make it. And honestly, with kids these days, you can go a little over the top and feed them almost an arrogance to create confidence within them. Adam and I, at every player meeting we have before we sign a player, we tell them about the program. But the one thing we always tell them is this: like, look, we don't need you, right? In the travel ball world, it's really easy for players to feel like everybody needs them. And we tell them, like, we don't need you. If you come here, we're going to be better. If you don't come here, we're going to find somebody that will fill that role and do just as good. And the reality is, if you go somewhere else, we will play you and we will beat you. And we've never lost to somebody that's decided not to play for us. And I think part of it is, like, a lot of the time they hear that and they think, like, dang, I want to play for a coach that's that competitive. I want to play for a coach that knows, like, we have a system in place that's going to work no matter the personnel. And they take hold of that. They really, really enjoy that type of mentality. So don't be afraid. Like, I think sometimes we're too apologetic about, like, our systems and our program and who we are as people and as coaches. And you have to project yourself in a very confident, unapologetic way. You don't have to be arrogant or a jerk, but you know what you do, and you know what you do well as a coach. You can project that when you're talking to players before they sign, and you can give your players on your team that same confidence after they've signed, just by being unapologetically you. That's a huge key, I think.
Sounds like a really good book title. Be unapologetically you. I like
Hey,
that.
there's a women's book called Girls Stop Apologizing, and I hate to say it's really good and that I've read parts of it, but it's really good and I've read parts of it. It's awesome.
You look really pretty today, Jake.
Hey, Rachel Hollis is incredible. All right, she might be just a whim. She's incredible. She's got good stuff.
You're right. Josh mentioned, just since we mentioned the certifications, like, as we wrap up, are there any certifications that you guys recommend or find valuable that are out there right now, or maybe some that you can use, or even if you wanted to send that over to Josh to just get an idea for him to see one and see what it looks like? I know, like you said, Jake, we're coming up with one. Ronnie's almost got one finished up, and we try to see just the detail in it and everything like that. But I'm not sure on my end. I'm not sure what else is out there. If there's anything that is valuable, if there's something that I would recommend. I personally don't know enough about it, so I can't give you a good answer. But if any of you guys have anything.
I can elaborate on that a little bit. So there's a lot of hitting ones out there. I don't think there's really any that kind of encompass everything. That's kind of our goal with our certification. I'm actually in the process of finalizing one for every coach that coaches Ad Hoc Corner. Has to pass in order to coach for us. It's not anything that's going to scare anybody. It's really just a baseline test to make sure that they understand all of the basics of teaching youth athletes, and then we're going to elaborate on that a little bit more. But I like the On-Base U one. It's expensive, a little bit over $1,000, but it's a 3-day seminar. That's really the only one that I really, really like. If you're looking outside for a certification, what we are trying to do, though, with the DC is we're actually trying to come up with one that's not super, super expensive, but goes into the coach's evaluation system that Jake has, but also teaches everybody, like, here's what we're looking for, and this is how you can really coach a team effectively. But if there is one to recommend right now, it's definitely On-Base U. It just is really, really pricey. Other than that, it's really just like K-Motion and Rapsodo have them, but they're just really for hitting, and that's kind of technology stuff. So there's really nothing out there just yet that's specific for baseball-specific training. But we're trying to kind of bridge that gap.
And Ronnie, I want to piggyback off of yours, and this is just a question, open forum. You can shoot me either way, down, up, side to side. Like, would it be helpful, one, to not only have a certification, but two, and it doesn't have to be for you, but for some of your coaches, like Jake, you can even think about this. I know some of the other coaches in here run a program that has multiple teams, to just walk them through something like that. And two, would it be more valuable if there was a video course attached where it was like, hey, here's just as a baseline, an hour, right? An hour of video content of these 3 specific subjects: offensive, defensive, handling my players, boom. Like, that's what it would be, whatever it is, but have video content along with it, like a course, technically, that I can click on, it walks me through it. I have a PDF of maybe that in verbiage. I get to see and feel that person writing on a whiteboard or just delivering me the content. And then after I get my certification and know that everything I went through in the training is something applicable to what I can use as a coach and for my other coaches that actually got better. Because I think there's some that are out there that are eyewash, to be honest, like lack of better term, they're kind of trash. But there are some that are very, like the On Base U. I know a lot of people who have used that one who really enjoy that, and it was very beneficial to them, but the price is different. So if there's like, if you guys think of something like that or have anything that you'd like to add in there, I want to create some sort of a course that helps coaches just have an understanding, because some are coming from an IT background and never played sports. You know, a lot of us in here, we have some sports backgrounds, we play a little bit, but there's some coaches out there coaching Little League, and I know Jeannie in here with Wairika Little League. Like a lot of the coaches, they've never coached anything or played a sport. They're just there to help the kids, but they don't know what they're doing. So we do a coaches clinic every year just to provide a little bit of value. Here's some drills. Here's some ways to speak to the kids. Here's some terminology to help get your point across that can relate to the kids. Anything like that, if that would be helpful, please let us know, and just let us know like what that format would look like, because it gives us all a better baseline and idea, at least on my end, of what people are looking for, what a coach would find valuable, what anyone would find valuable.
Yeah, so just so you guys know, the basic layout and the skeleton of each certification, there's going to be levels to it. And honestly, the goal is to keep them as cheap as possible, because I want more people to take them. But especially from Hot Corner side, there will be a video, probably 8 to 10 minute video in each specific section, plus a written layout of everything. And then what I'm doing is I'm actually going in there and giving baselines for each age level. So for instance, long toss distance per age. You know, if a lot of people don't understand how far kids should be throwing at certain ages, whether it's below average, average, or outstanding, we're actually putting that together for you so that you understand, you know, okay, what kid am I dealing with? You know, maybe he's, I don't know, 12 years old and he's throwing 40 miles an hour. Yeah, he's below average, but why and how can I help him? So that will all be a part of the level one. And that's the way that the whole thing is going to go for it. Because we want to create a baseline first, even with coaches. The goal and the model behind it is to try and help coaches that don't do baseball every day, that have, you know, jobs outside of baseball, that we can help and they can help the kids. So that's initially the goal. And then we're going to elaborate on that even more. Hopefully at some point there will be a full course associated with the highest level of certification where we're able to kind of give that out and say, hopefully you can coach a high school or college baseball program, or maybe it's a JUCO or an NAIA after taking this course. But we're going to start at the ground level first and make sure that we can kind of hit everybody that wants to be a baseball coach. This is going to hit you. So if you guys have any recommendations as to what you think would help, please mention that and let us know, because I'm looking for anything, you know, more than just what we're doing now. So.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, once again, we appreciate everybody popping on here and continually showing up and learning and providing value. George, thanks for adding some of your value in there. And a lot of the books in there are great. I want to get a book list together. I've said it for the last 5 months, but I'm going to start working on that. So if you guys have book recommendations that we can put together for a master list, because I'm looking for new ones too. So some of these marine ones that I haven't read before are obviously huge. I love the Energy Bus. That one's so good for our kids, and not just them. Like, I'd read it in college and it fired me up because I was negative Nancy, and then it turned me into trying to be all positive and upbeat and everything. So let's help each other. That helps everybody right there, being able to get those books. If you have book recommendations, if you know some of the guys in here, send it to them. We'll put something together. On my end, you can send it my way as well. Email, text me, whatever. And we'll start working on that so we can get something for not only the coaches, but for the athletes too, because a lot of them are just sitting around. Maybe an Audible would help, a YouTube video, etc. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for showing up again. This is awesome. Let's keep inspiring. Let's keep encouraging people to be in here and continue to grow. And we'll be back here tomorrow. And I'm going to start uploading these to YouTube, ideally by the end of the weekend. So if you missed a session or you can't make a session tomorrow, next week, it's all right. Ideally, they'll be on YouTube, so we can always go back and watch these. And I'm going to put down the 4 agreements as well, Sean. Appreciate it. Let's go.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys. You rock. We'll see you tomorrow.
Take care.
See you, everybody.